father of the girl who's been killed, kind of proud of his situation. He started mentioning that his situation is rather similar to Dante's and his separation from Beatrice, and his daughter happens to be called Beatrice herself. But I think, for me, like Kate's character, based on the fictional character, the one the main does, is I think she's also in quite a similar place to Daniel, but she's she's got a career, she's enjoying a career with her family life, she has kids, she's separated, she has all the same stresses of Thomas's life, Daniel's character's life, but being a woman, she's just having to get on with it. So she's like having to get on with it and juggle it and manage it, whereas he's being a bit more of an adolescent and having a breakdown about it.
Interesting.
Are you as despairing of tabloid culture as Thomas is?
Well, one of the reasons of having Thomas in as a character was I didn't want it to be one of the things. I didn't want it to be like, as a filmmaker, we're taking the high ground and tabloid journalists are rubbish and they're exploiting a case. We're making a film and we're taking the high ground and we're now slagging off the journalists. But having said that, I mean, I do think, like for instance, all the journalists I met, were bright, intelligent people. We spent, known them now for quite a long time, met them quite a lot of times. Especially Bobby, but quite a lot of the other journalists as well. These are people who, as most of them like foreign correspondents in a way. They're English language journalists working in Italy or most of the Italians. They like most journalists, you start by wanting to tell people about the world. It's obviously incredibly important that journalists tell people about the world. I think it's important people cover cases. Obviously, trials, as Kate's character says, that trials have to be made public. There's the whole kind of court reporter has been a kind of institution for hundreds of years because it's the whole point of trials is it's public. It's not supposed to be private. It's a public thing that everyone should know about. That's how justice is done. So all that side is good. But even the journalists themselves are aware that they're also having to sell stories, and if the market seems to be, the market is for titillation, the market is for gossip, the market is for speculation about exactly how someone was murdered, speculation about sex lives of people, that if that's the market, if you want to live and you want to make money, then you have to satisfy that market. And so Thomas is there to clarify that deliberately Thomas is like not a good guy, he does as many bad things as anyone else in the film, he's as weak as anyone else in the film, he's having a crisis and so on. But at the end of the day, I guess within the context of the film, Thomas is still trying to grapple with how to make a film about this story and say something that he feels is true and is worth saying, which is very simple, which is actually at the end of it all, this girl had a whole life ahead of her, has been killed, and sort of the family's love for her, the idea of love for someone who's been killed, the tragedy of her losing all the kind of possibilities for the joy that she had ahead of her, that's what he wants to make us feel about, and I think that is something that tabloids don't do.
Can we discuss the casting in the film? How did Daniel, Cara and Kate actually get involved? Were they people you were thinking of from the outset?
It varies. The casting process was kind of normal casting process. We already had the script. We work on the script all the time. So the script, sometimes you meet people and you're working the script around the people you meet. In this case, we already had the script. We were going to cast it, and Daniel was the first person I cast. He had done Rush, which Revolution Films, which is a company I have with Andrew Eaton, had been involved making that. Andrew produced Rush. And so I knew from Andrew that Daniel was a really great guy to work with. So I met Daniel. I met him in Brussels. He was filming in Brussels. And when I met him, I thought he'd be great for the part. So obviously the part wasn't written as German, but so we sort of did a few adjustments to accommodate that. But he seemed to me. I mean, he's a great actor, but also he's a really nice person to work with. And it seemed to me that he had because he's a writer, he's very playing roles like journalists or writers. They're difficult because in the case of being a writer, it's kind of quite a passive thing. In the case of both writer and journalist, you've got to have seem sort of intelligent in a certain way that you feel like it's believable that they are that person, and so Daniel had all that. And he's, I wanted those characters, as I said before, to do quite a lot of negative things. Obviously he's also in a kind of crisis that makes him quite hard work, but at the same time, just to be sympathetic enough that people would still want him to come out of that crisis and want him to somehow find some way out of the woods. So should I go through all of them, or is that enough? There's Kate.
Yes, Kate.
Kate I met in LA, and Kate I met in LA, and I mean, we were looking for American journalists, really, but for no, you know, because we wanted to have the different kind of angles on the stories the same way as the real story had. And obviously Kate's not American, but, you know, she's lived in LA a long time. And, again, you know, I think, you know, when I met her, she's very, very bright. You know, she's, Daniel was extremely impressed by the fact not only that Kate speaks Russian, but she turned out she also was very good at German, so they'd always be jabbering away in German in the car when they were driving along. And you know, journalists have that kind of competitive intelligence. You have a bunch of journalists, like the ones, the real people, you know, covering the case. But I know lots of journalists from different kind of films and so on. And there is that kind of thing of work together. You know, they kind of like to, you know, it's not like they're showing off, but they like, you know, you have to have a certain sort of energy to be that sort of journalist. And you know, I think Kate has that kind of sharpness, you know, quickness that I kind of felt was good for the part.
Carl?
So we have met lots of it. To me, you know, in a way, it was like the hardest part to cast because it's, you know, she has to sort of represent something. You know, she is supposed to be a sort of modern day Beatrice for Dante. You know, she is like, she has to somehow make you feel that she sort of embodies something of Elizabeth, the girl who's been killed, you know, or even Jessica, you know, the girl who's like had her life kind of, you know, destroyed by being jailed. She has to be a sort of, you know, in a way, she has to be, you know, she obviously at that age where there is a sort of, you know, she's, you know, there's a sex side, but she has to also have something of ability to represent as well. There's kind of the daughter that Daniel's missing as well. So it was, you know, so it was very tricky to find someone that feels like, okay, yes, that is what is, it makes you remember that you should grab life, you should enjoy life, you know, in the moment, be in the moment and so on. And I've met lots of people, lots of good people, but no one that I thought was right for the part. And then I didn't know who Cara was, to be honest. So someone in the office, in my office, said, you should think about Cara Delevingne, and she showed me on the internet what she looked like, and then I met her, and she'd like come in that night before. She flown overnight from America or Caribbean, so you know, basically on a transatlantic flight, came straight from the airport into the meeting, was full of energy and like, you know, just like, you know, and so after about 2 minutes felt to me obvious that she was the right person for the part.
Thanks.
Yeah, you feel that they're going to have an affair, but they don't. It's all about fun, really. It's just about kind of catching the moment.
Exactly, and you know, and it was something which was tricky because I wanted to have that feeling that, oh, they're going to have an affair, because I wanted to feel a bit like, oh, it's that kind of tabloid story where, you know, where you have, you know, where it's that. So you kind of didn't want to be so like childlike that there was, you wouldn't have a moment of thinking, is that the way it's going to go? But then at the same time to be really clear that that isn't what happens, you know, and that, you know, that, you know, and obviously that's sort of Beatrice, this pure thing like that, you know, even in the fictional world of, you know, how Beatrice is and Dante, it's like he meets like when she's 9 once, then he meets when she's like 18 once, and then she's like, it's a completely spiritual kind of, it's about a sort of, you know, has nothing to do with sex or carnality or physicality or whatever, or any social intercourse. It's just kind of pure idealised love. And yeah, I wanted to, like there to be, you know, it's obviously it's not like he's in love with her like that, but I wanted like to have some sense that there's a sort of joy that she has about her own life that he sort of senses, and that, you know, the idea is that it allows her to imagine Elizabeth a little bit more, to kind of think about Elizabeth a bit more, because he's with this person who's similar to Elizabeth, or fictional Elizabeth. And also, but also like to remind him of his daughter in a way, like to kind of like focus, kind of weirdly refocus on the idea that, you know, that actually you have to do, you know, that you know, that what he's because he's missing his daughter, right? It's not, he's not aware of missing his daughter, but somehow that it's like she has to like do a lot in the film for like, this is kind of what is missing, this is what has been taken away from Elizabeth, this is what's been taken away from Elizabeth's family, this sense, you know, all the pleasure in life that you can have. Quite symbolic, quite tricky role to do.
I was wondering if this felt like quite a risky project for you to undertake, in the sense that the True Love case isn't quite really concluded, and I suppose it's easy, I suppose potentially you might view it, people might be cynical or things like that, might pessimism, and did it feel...
Yeah, it was quite difficult for me. It was like quite difficult you know, it's quite difficult, you know, at the beginning to deal with like how to handle between fiction and real stories. And we you know, a lot of films I've done of like are fictional films but have a connection to real stories. So it's like it's an area where it's before it's particularly difficult in this case because, as you say, for all, you know, all the opportunities. It's particularly difficult as well because everyone just assumed whilst we were making it, and there was a reasonable amount of, like normally, you know, when you make a film, no one hears about it, you know what I mean? But we had quite a lot of publicity about us making it beforehand. So even like in Italy, like where we were filming, there was a lot of publicity. It was always written up as an Amanda Knox film, and, you know, are we saying this about the Italian justice system, are we saying this about Amanda Knox, and so on, which, you know, in the end, I think that, you know, now it's finished, it's like, okay, it's like, look at it, it's like, we're not saying anything about that, you know what I mean? But when you're making it, you can't get, it's very hard to get away from that, and which made it quite hard in a practical way, to, you know, some of the filming was quite tricky, because there's quite a lot of, like, no, it's not that sort of film, it's not about this, and so on. And then it was difficult kind of, you know, because with the Kercher, you know, obviously for me the heart of the film is like it's about, you know, a girl who's been killed, a girl who's had her life taken away from her, and you know, obviously part of that is you know, what the father's lost a daughter, Daniel's, you know, paralleling that with his missing his daughter, and the Kercher family in the real case, you know, had gone to, you know, had avoided the media, but you know, they'd gone to the trials occasionally and said, you know, the reason they're there is to make sure that Meredith doesn't get forgotten. But they'd like stayed out of like getting involved in the media. So I kind of didn't want to feel like I was trying to drag them the family into this, but at the same time, obviously was worried that, you know, felt like, you know, because we're trying to do something which is like, you know, in a sense a sort of version of what they were saying, that was trying to say why, you know, why was Meredith forgotten, why in general in these cases is the person who's been killed forgotten. That, you know, it was a difficult area. So, you know, but anyway, since we made it, so then, you know, we showed it to the family, and the family felt it was a kind of appropriate kind of response, and you know, so they allowed, you know, they said it was good to have to put, you know, it would be a good idea to put on the kind of caption at the end, remembering Meredith. So that kind of resolved that, but that wasn't something you could resolve beforehand, because obviously you don't know how that's going to go until the end. And obviously, if they'd been like, this is terrible, you know, then that would have been an extremely complicated situation.
There's some really hilarious deadpan scenes concerning the film industry in the movie. For example, where Thomas is trying to discuss this project at lunch. Did you base any of these scenes on experiences you had yourself?
No, I've never ever had conversations like that. I've been told by the financiers to say. But, I mean, it's like, you know, it's like, of course, you know, I mean, so I think, you know, like our financiers were a bit nervous about some of the scenes with financiers. I mean, for me, it's like, I mean, look, you do have conversations like that all the time, you know, inevitably, it's like, you know, but then it's like, for me, it's like, you know, Daniel is being, my idea is like, you know, Daniel is not like, you know, I try to cover him before, Daniel is not like the good guy, like, it's not like Daniel's great and they're terrible, it's not like Daniel's great and the journalists are terrible, it's not like Daniel's great and his wife is terrible, you know, Daniel is as problematic as anyone else in the film. Doesn't mean to say he's always wrong, but it doesn't mean he's always right. So those kind of meetings, do you have meetings like that? Yes, I'm not saying specifically on this film, but you have meetings like that, and you know, and that's, you know, the nature of, you know, the director has one job to do, financier has another job to do, it's a different thing. But it's not supposed to be slagging them off, you know. I mean, it's trying to clarify this, like, you know, that filmmaking is as compromised as journalism. So the journalists, you know, the real journalists we met, you know, were frustrated that they felt they had to write certain sort of stories to get sold. You know, they're bright, people are sympathetic people, they want to inform the world about all the important things in the world, but they know they have to package a story in a certain way. So, you know, obviously filmmaking has similar pressures. They're different, but they're not completely different. You know, and all, you know, like almost every job has those kind of contradictions between sort of a sort of idealised idea of what you might want to do and the reality of how to achieve that.
You've gone through a film a year, practically.
Well, it's not that much, is it?
Not that much.